discussion after our panel talk, so don't tire out your voices quite yet. Good evening and welcome to the Grua Center. My name is Jane Miser and I'm the Executive Director here for several more days at least. Welcome to tonight's program, which is called Borough Vision 2020, and I'm thrilled to see so many people from the community that are here this evening to talk about our wonderful village. This is the first of what we hope is a series of discussions on the borough. The idea for a community discussion started several months ago as we were in the dead of winter. Several groups of concerned citizens met to discuss the current state of affairs in the borough. How are the merchants faring in the off-season? Do we have enough public engagement in civic and government activities? What are nonprofit roles in our community? Were just some of the questions that were addressed by these groups. So tonight, we are broadening our discussion and bringing the conversation to the community as a whole. And this is just the start. We will hear from our panel of presenters that are sitting up here right now. But more importantly, we want to hear from you, the audience, as well. So please, as you listen this evening, think about questions, comments, suggestions that you would like to add to the conversation. We have plenty of time to hear from the whole group. So with that, also please turn off your cell phones, thank you. I'd like to begin with Jason Vincent, who is Stonington's Director of Planning, who will be moderating the discussion this evening. Welcome, Jason.
Great. Thank you, Jane, and thank you all for being here. It's great to see this type of interest, especially on a Thursday evening on a beautiful summer night, so we appreciate that you're here. When the conversation began, as Jane mentioned, a number of different stakeholders came together and were starting to pick at some of the issues that they felt the borough should be addressing as we move forward as a community. It became a realization that we needed a plan, that we need to think about what those issues are, assess them, and perhaps come up with strategies to move forward. To do that plan, the inventory is a critical component. And your participation in that inventory is why we're here tonight. So our goals this evening are twofold. One is to listen to some of the issues from some of the stakeholders that were part of the initial process, and they'll do those presentations. And then the second is we want to hear from you. We don't have a huge amount of time to do that this evening, but we plan on doing a number of these different forums in the future. The key for tonight is planting some of the seeds of ideas as part of that inventory phase so that we can go through this process to assess what the issues may be, and then as a community come together and determine whether or not we should do something. A plan doesn't always result in a decision to act, but when you do an alternatives assessment, one of the options is always do nothing, and that's one of the choices that we have as a community. But if there are other things, other options that are more compelling, more interesting to us, that are valuable to our ideas, the plan gives us the tools to figure out how to move forward. So I just wanted to frame that out to you before we begin the presentations. We are looking right now this evening at a hard adjourn at 7 o'clock. So when we get to that time, it's my job to manage the process. Our first speaker this evening is going to be Jeff Callahan, the Borough Warden, and you'll see in the program his background. So Jeff, if you want to come up here, please.
Thank you, Jason. And again, I'm also very pleased to see such a large turnout to listen to and talk about the place we all care so much about. As a community, Stonington Borough depends on three entities to define itself and to create its vitality. The not-for-profits, the merchants and fishermen, and the government. But only one of these is essential to its existence as a municipality in the state of Connecticut, and that, of course, is the government. Simply put, no government, no borough as a municipality. And I'm sad to report that that is a real possibility if we continue on the track we're on now. Let me give an example. About 20 years ago, when I first ran for office, I'd never run for office in my life, I guess maybe in high school or something. And of course I lost. But there were two full slates of candidates running actively against each other, and I might add civilly as well. And several hundred people voted in that election. In the last two elections, 2013 and 2015, both parties, that is the Democrats and Republicans, struggled to fill all the open positions. Everybody who ran was elected, and we still had one vacancy. And as opposed to 20 years ago when several hundred people voted, 66 people voted in 2015. 66 people, probably about the number that's in this room. Why is this happening? I'm sure a political scientist could identify a number of causes for this trend, but one of them is obvious even to a layperson, and that's this. In 1900, when the first U.S. Census enumerated the borough separately from the rest of the town, there were something like 2,000 and there were about 2,000 people living in the borough. Today there are 924 who consider this their residence. So we're now about 40% of the size we were in a little over a century ago. So clearly this has a large impact on how we sustain the borough government as well as other things. I will talk about what the borough government does and how it works in a few minutes, but first a little bit of history. Stonington Borough was chartered by the state of Connecticut in May of 1801. We were the second borough to be established in the state. Bridgeport was the first. We are now the oldest borough still in existence. It's not clear why this borough was formed. Probably it's because the people who lived in the village area wanted some amenities like gas street lights or something like that the rest of the town, which was largely rural, did not want to pay for with their taxes. At the time, by the way, the population of the entire town of Stonington was about 3,000, and the borough probably had a few hundred people living here on the peninsula. Over the course of the 19th century, the number of boroughs in the state of Connecticut grew to a maximum in the early 20th century of about 26. That was the peak of the borough movement. And again, these were little villages where probably the surrounding rural folks didn't want to pay for whatever the amenities were that they wanted. Most of the boroughs have since become either cities like Bridgeport or the city of Grua, or have simply been disestablished and absorbed back into the surrounding town. So at the present time, there are 9 boroughs in the state of Connecticut. Stonington Borough government performs 4 primary functions. First and foremost is fire protection. And it's obviously critical given the density, the construction, and the age of most of the buildings in the borough. Our fire department is the only municipal department in the town of Stonington. There are 6 departments in the town of Stonington. The other 5 are all fire districts. And fire districts under Connecticut law are totally independent of the municipality in which they reside. So they have their own taxing authority, and if you live anywhere else in town, you can get a separate bill for your for your fire protection. About 1/3 of the borough budget and about half of the property tax revenue supports the fire department. At this mill rate, the borough fire department is one of the least costly in the town of Stonington. The second vital function that the borough government performs is maintenance of the streets, including repairs, plowing, sweeping, drainage, and signage. A significant portion of the cost, about 80%, is actually reimbursed from the town of Stonington under state law that requires that. And the same two people who are our street department, Roger Colello and Sue Cudero, also pick up the brush once a month, empty public trash receptacles, and maintain our 6 parks, among other tasks they do. The third function of the government is the regulation of land and harbor use. And these duties are largely carried out by volunteer commissions with some professional help. The fourth and final borough government function is the mostly unseen administrative overhead that comes with being a municipality of any size. That is, reports to Hartford, reports to Washington, paying bills, responding to lawsuits, maintaining buildings, and so forth. Not particularly glamorous, but it comes with being a municipality. How's the borough government structured? Fundamentally the same way it was in 1801. The original charter specified a warden, 6 burgesses, a clerk, a treasurer, a tax collector, and all of which we still have. It also created a few positions like bailiffs and haywards that we no longer use. If anybody wants to know what a hayward is, you can ask me later. So for 215 years, through numerous charter revisions, we've maintained the same basic structure. It's imperfect. What organization isn't? But it seems to work. It works as long as there are enough residents who are willing and able to serve on the various boards and commissions that make up the government. And that's the problem. We're being squeezed between a shrinking and aging population and government, and that's government in general, which is increasingly complex and technical and requires a lot of special knowledge, even for a tiny place like the borough. Like every other municipality in the state of Connecticut, we are expected to comply with OSHA, DEP, FEMA, ADA regulations, and those are just a few that I thought of immediately. Many of the regulations are very technical, and they require very special expertise to comply with them. And if you don't, you can find yourself in trouble. So what to do? In my view, there are 3 options. And the first is the one that Jason mentioned, which is to do nothing. Carry on as before, hope for a sudden influx of smart, civic-minded young people who don't have to commute to Boston or LA or New York or London to provide for their families. Number 2 is to revise the borough charter with the goal of creating a more sustainable, perhaps streamlined government, perhaps reducing the size of the board and warden purchases, and even perhaps hiring a professional manager for the borough. And the third is one that I suggested earlier, or hinted at earlier, which is to disestablish the borough and fully integrate back into the town of Stonington. We would have to create a new borough fire district to maintain the fire protection services that we have, and perhaps create a village tax district to fund services that the town doesn't provide, but which we wish to continue, like brush pickup or something like that. All of these options involve risk. And the last 2, revising the borough charter or dissolving the borough, would require significant work. If we dissolve the borough, I can't just lock the door and give the keys to Ralph Simmons. That doesn't work. There are state statutes to mandate how you do these things. But I think that option 1 is, which is do nothing, is in the end the riskiest of the 3. But I also believe that if we confront the challenges that we face and work together, we can come up with a solution that is best for the future of this borough. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts during the question and answer period. Now, in closing, I'd like to note that the borough's dilemma is not unique. Almost every day one hears or reads about communities somewhere in this country complaining about change, about things aren't the way they were in the old days, and that the government, whatever it is not coping with these changes. But it's not just in the U.S. Last month, Lynn and I were in Italy for 2 weeks, and we heard similar complaints from people where we traveled in Italy. Same things, change, tourists, etc. Venice's situation in particular seemed very similar to ours. A declining population, rising sea level, and disappearing industries like fishing. So I'm considering forming a new borough commission, which will work with the Venetian officials to come up with a solution. Naturally, this will require traveling to Venice a few times a year. And if anyone wants to volunteer for this commission or any other, see me after the talks are over. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Jeff. I think that framed that issue very well, and while I don't provide staff support to the town, to the borough, I'd be glad to do it for the Venetian Commission. So, our next speaker is representing the merchant stakeholders. Deborah Norman will come up and tell you a little bit about what they're dealing with. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Deborah Norman, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Stonington Borough Merchants Association. Tonight, I want to explore a question that makes our borough thrive. What makes our borough thrive from a merchant or retail perspective? Less than 30 years ago, we had 3 grocery stores, a dry cleaner, a general store, a hardware store, 5 bars, which we still have today, a school, and many year-round residents. But things change and times change. There are many factors that have affected how small business operate. Some of the largest to affect retail are the big box stores, or one-stop shopping. Then there's the internet, where one can buy anything at any time. And most recently, a sizable recession. So, how do merchants in a small town survive? That's the question. Over the years, the Stonington Borough Merchants Association has tried many things. Some have worked and some have not. However, the common theme that has worked is getting more people into town. We are not proponents of huge buses full of tourists or Carnival cruise ships pulling up and docking and having people streaming ashore. That's not what we're about. Here are a few things that have worked. The Stonington Merchants website, the nonprofit events such as Music in the Borough, garden and house tours, sailing and NESS events, holiday strolls, farmer markets, the lighthouse, and other historic attractions. We have recently spent the majority of our operating budget with the help of the SVIA on advertising on National Public Radio. So these are some of the things that we are trying, and we will keep trying. But now I would like to ask you, what would you like to see happen in town? And that's it. Short and sweet.
Excellent. Thank you, Deborah. Thanks for framing some of the issues the merchants are dealing with in terms of not just locally but globally changing consumer patterns. Our last presenter this evening will be Spike Lobdell to talk about the nonprofit sector. Spike.
Thanks. It's great to see you all here tonight. I am here, as they said, to talk about nonprofits, and hopefully those of you involved with them will understand that I believe that the nonprofits are major contributors to the quality of life in the borough. Just the past couple of weeks, I visited the Stonington Free Library, I exercised at the YMCA, played paddle at the Como Courts, attended church at Calvary, ate produce from the farmer's market, walked the Nature Trail at Coden Farm, visited the seaport and the aquarium with children and friends visiting, and I'm looking forward to the Historical Society Gala next weekend. And importantly, we're all sitting in a wonderful nonprofit, Grua, which is enabling us to have this meeting. For my family, though, nonprofits are especially relevant as I am a full-time volunteer at NESS working way too many hours, probably because I can't find a real job. That was supposed to be funny for you, not funny for him. While all these nonprofits are not located in the borough, we as borough residents get the major benefit of it. I have 3 main points to make tonight. First, the number and diversity of nonprofits is surprising. Second, nonprofits have a significant impact on borough life, and it's often underestimated. And third, looking to 2020, the topic of this talk, collaborations will be really critical for success, survival, and building our community. In 2013, I participated on a steering committee that was led by Wendy Berry, who's here tonight, that assessed the impact of nonprofits on overall Stonington. Some of the conclusions I will make will be based on this work and updated for time and also folks in the borough. So first, the number and diversity of nonprofits is surprising. Estimated number of nonprofits in Stonington is 160, in the borough 35. That excludes personal kind of foundations that people use to make donations to nonprofits. We estimated that the number of these nonprofits in the borough have increased from 25 in 2008 to 35 now. They span a very diverse scope of activities: education, arts, health, religious, and clubs. The revenue growth estimated is from 2010 to 2014 is 11.5%, well outpacing the economy. On the flip side, versus other counties in Connecticut, none of our core nonprofits have quote-unquote ceased to exist throughout the economic downturn. Interesting point. Stonington has 4.32 public charities per 1,000 people, whereas Fairfield County has just under 3. What does that mean? 2, nonprofits have a significant impact on borough life. Employment. Approximately 10% of our jobs come from nonprofits. Second, volunteerism. Feeling good and supporting a mission-driven cause motivates many people, and our nonprofits would cease to exist without good volunteers. Services. The ones that they provide, but also they're major buyers of services from other organizations like legal and accounting firms. Education and entertainment. Not only programming and lecture series, many of our nonprofits providing professional certifications. Social, community connectedness. We're a community in this room right now, but also clubs like the WAD Club, SHYC, are forms of nonprofits that bring together people, and that becomes a social network, developing friendships that maybe last a lifetime. Tourism, as Deborah said, giving another reason to visit the borough. Influence over government policy, educating the public on current issues. Funding, attracting external grant dollars from outside the borough, supporting the borough economy. And one that I think is very important, reputation. As a community, how are we trying to add value? The Connecticut Association of Nonprofits said the real value of nonprofits in the state is that these organizations provide the social safety net and cultural, educational, and historical and heritage background of our community that will last a lifetime. So, looking to 2020, collaborations will be critical to success, survival, and improving our community. In NESS, we talk about growing the pie of sailing, green education, etc. Because if we argue over the slice of the pie won't get any bigger. I use this cartoon. It's up. That's been up there the whole time. Wrecked my punchline. Anyway, top of the thing, arguing over the pie, fighting over the slice. But if everybody can work together and collaborate, the pie can grow. So crowding out is a major issue in the borough. Many nonprofits chasing the same dollars. They're chasing the same volunteers. Crowding out underscores the need for collaboration. Nonprofits working with other nonprofits to advance programming. Public-private sector partnerships. Maybe a for-profit organization working with a nonprofit organization for a cause. Maybe it's a medical cause, MS or anything like that. Many of those partnerships are going on throughout the country. As a result, many nonprofits are seeking out alliances outside the borough. For NESS, that's one of the driving factors why we now have 7 locations outside of the borough in New London, Westerly, thinking about Hartford and Norwich. So I believe in the future, nonprofits must demonstrate efficiency also. One of the benefits from the nonprofit roundtable was nonprofits got together to talk about shared issues like insurance, or how do you manage facilities. So that type of collaboration, help reduce fixed costs, is going to be important. Because the bottom line, funding, nonprofits largely survive through the strength of their donor bases, and collaborating will be key for their survival in the future. So I believe that that nonprofits organizations have a major role in our community, and I look forward to working with other nonprofits to hopefully that continues for a long time to come. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Spike. We're now going to ask you to give us some of your comments. What I need to do though is I need to move my easel over here. I hadn't thought about the fact that there were going to be this many people, and I'm going to need a microphone to maybe repeat questions or comments made. Thank you. Oh, yes.
I wasn't sure if you were ready for comment, and I'd just like to address this for one block.
Yeah, okay, so when we started the program, we were thinking about how we might engage some question and answer, and I think the logical next step would be questions and comments from the audience to the panelists perhaps. We'll track those notes. We did some other exercises tonight that, if there's a need to talk about those, we'll get into those as well. So if you want to lead us off.
Do you mind if I just come up there so I don't know?
Yeah, that would be probably more convenient for everybody.
I don't think I need that to say. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Callahan. I've been resident in Borough full-time or part-time for the past 13 years. I'm also proud to be a member of the Stonington Borough Library Board, and as you know, they are going to be embarking on a strategic plan and looking at the future as well. So this is very important for that conversation. So why am I standing up here tonight? I'm going to talk very briefly about a topic that is very important to me and bigger than all of these other issues and needs to, I think, be addressed before that. The whole world right now is addressing the issue of safety. We're addressing it at the world level, we're addressing it at the national level, and I feel very strongly that at the core here of Stonington Borough, we have safety issues that we need to address and protocols that we need to think about. Why do I say that? Think of the unique, wonderful location we live on. It is a peninsula. We are most at risk for fires, which I was not a part of. That was right before I moved up here. And from what I understand, it's a business on Chinese fire drill. But we are also directly impacted by hurricanes and nor'easters, which I have directly participated in. And the information that came out then was of great concern to me. So we live on a peninsula. We're affected by these two things. We have a population that is older. We have a lot of children coming into the borough this summer. And I would put forth that we do not have good plans when emergencies occur. And having Captain Carlson call us as things are developing, when not everyone has cell phones, not everyone has internet, and many times those things are down and these things occur, we have an issue here. Having personally experienced that with 2 hurricanes, where communications are down, and how I was getting my information was through the rumor mills at Tom's newsstand, I think that this is an issue that needs to be addressed for all of those reasons. So my proposal to put out there, and there's a certain organization here in town who is already doing a lot of work on this, and hopefully will share the information with us when they are done. But I think this town needs a safety protocol of what do we do if there's a fire, what do we do if there's a hurricane, and it can't be as those events are occurring, but rather before. Every resident in this borough should know if a hurricane's coming, what do you do to prepare in your house? What do you do if when it's coming, who's going to communicate, and what is your ditch kit if you have to go? And the 3 organizations, based on my experience of what I've heard between the fire, the police, and the ambulance, there is no coordinated function there. And they all have to come together and work together. So my plea to all of us is, look at that.
Something that was not come up tonight is the condition of the state of Connecticut and how it will affect us. Connecticut has the highest per capita income in the U.S. It also has either the highest or second highest per capita debt in the someone who has been the chair of the nominating committee for the vestry of Calvary Church for many years, I'm discovering more and more that candidates who are asked to serve have to decline because they tell me, Doug, we don't live here year-round, and Connecticut is not our legal residence. That is because of the tax issue. And I fear that if that grows, we're going to have some wonderful civic-minded people who are only here for 6 months. And their level of participation is obviously, it's going to be restricted to the months that they are here. So there's no solution to it, but I think it's something to consider on the horizon as more and more of, I mean, this is an older than typical community. And there are people I know who have said for them it's the estate tax. The estate tax is enough of a concern that they're going to spend 6 months of the year somewhere else.
Thank you. Sorry, oh yes, I'm at the top, sorry, thank you.
My name is Regan Morris. I'm asking, is it impossible to consider enlarging the borough? We have young families, we have people who live year-round, very close to us. Could they not be part of the borough? Could we not capture them somehow or invite them in or on or with us?
Yeah, so the statement that was made, in case everybody didn't hear it, was, would it be possible to enlarge the borough, expand the geographic boundaries that define where the borough is? And perhaps by enlarging the borough, the people that live in that new area could contribute, that we'd gain households that maybe are here year-round or are younger. Perhaps that could solve some of the problems that we've identified.
Yeah, that's an option I hadn't considered because, one, it would take the cooperation of the town to do that. And my impression is the state of Connecticut would like to see all the boroughs go away and a lot of the towns to go away. The state of Connecticut would love to see more regionalization and larger entities, municipal entities. Connecticut is almost unique in terms of the number of small municipalities we have. And it's very, frankly, inefficient from an overall point of view. So I think the state would oppose that, and we'd have to work with the state to get that done, and not to mention the town.
Yes.
I can address as far as district formation. It's under the general statutes. We have to vote in each of your districts to change your boundary lines. And many people don't realize that the White Club, for example, is not in the borough. It's in the Stonington Fire District. Your borough line is very odd because the railroad was not here originally when you established the borough. It's going back in the 1800s. So the lines do not follow property boundaries, nor do they follow natural boundaries, which would have made more sense perhaps to really look at that at some particular time. However, you would have to have legal votes within your borough and within the Stonington Fire District to change your boundary lines legally.
Sure. Yeah, so that idea would require some troubleshooting to figure out whether or not it was warranted, and if the geography you were looking to expand actually was interested in being part of the borough. Yes.
I'm George Avery, sort of a follow-up on that. I just wanted to be sure this evening everybody remembers the borough is more than a peninsula now. There's a piece of the borough that is bounded by the railroad track and sort of down on the right as you're going out Meadow Avenue. And there's some fairly substantial residential areas there. And they abut other residential areas that are part of the town but not part of the borough. And in that area is one of the facilities that's subject to the most change going on at the moment in regards to purchase. That's the Velvet Mill. And the Velvet Mill is in the borough. And it is having an impact, its changing use is having an impact on the longtime residents in that neighborhood. They are feeling it. Some of them are in the borough, some of them are not in the borough. They are in the town, and there's a lot of confusion about how the land use issues created by changing uses of the borough, of the mill, will affect the abutting neighborhoods. But my major purpose was just to remind everybody that there is already a piece of the borough with a substantial number of residents in it that exists on the other side of the tract. And indeed, I think my family owns the smallest piece of land in the borough. I think we own about 20 square feet. It's underwater at high tide. One of the boundary markers is on the shore of Walker's Dock. And at that point, which we own, and at that point it makes a very sharp turn. But there is a borough stone there, and I think it's inspected every year. So we have about 15 or 20 feet in the borough. Therefore, I'm interested.
Jeff, I wanted to ask
If you stand.
Karen Connor for Hills. I wanted to ask Jeff what the maybe top 3 or pros and cons would be of being incorporated into the town and losing the status of the borough.
Well, we would lose the ability to have our own planning and zoning commission. So,
Yeah, so the first item that, Jeff, do you want to come up here, Jeff? Because that sounds like a list of 6 items that we're looking for, right?
I may only think of 4.
That's okay.
Yeah, if we were no longer a municipality, we could not have our own planning and zoning commission. And depending on where you are on various issues that are going on now, you might think that's a good thing or a bad thing. But we would lose that control that we have over planning and zoning within the borough, including the other part of the borough. So that's one thing I would say is a negative. We would maintain the fire department would be maintained. To me, losing Sue and Roger as the people who take care of our streets would be a problem. You know, the streets are very quirky, and those two have been doing snow plowing and so forth for so long that they know how to maneuver through the streets, and they know everybody. So if there's a car parked where it shouldn't be parked, they'll go knock on the door and get the person to move the car. And that's kind of a nice aspect to life here in the borough, I think. The pros, perhaps, just to give 2 of each, would be that well, first of all, we wouldn't pay, we'd still, to maintain the fire district, we'd probably pay about at least half the tax we pay now to the borough as a whole. But you would see a decrease in your taxes. And so that's one benefit, I suppose, is the taxes would go down. And, you know, the struggle to maintain the municipal government would go away. So that's two pros.
Is the 3rd year out of the job? 3rd year out of the job.
I retired 4 years ago.
Yes, right here.
Jim Quinn. What latitude does the borough have to enter into public-private partnerships that might be somewhat entrepreneurial in their flavor? For instance, to rehab a building downtown thoroughly wired with state-of-the-art technology and have perhaps offices available on an affordable basis so that younger people could come in and set up their shop in the borough and get them here during the day. So I don't know if there are statutory or regulatory constraints on the borough's ability to work with a private developer or work with private entrepreneurs to jumpstart those kinds of projects, but it feels like it might be an avenue worth exploring.
Yeah, I don't think there are any statutory barriers to doing that. There is a state statute that limits the amount of debt we can carry, but probably we could do something like that with one of these buildings within that ceiling. But obviously there'd be a cost associated with that, and it would impact taxes probably.
Yeah, the P3 is something that borough would be enabled to do if it were looking to do that public-private partnership where the borough may own land and the private sector may choose to build out the facility, whether it's the private sector as a for-profit or a non-profit. The statutes allow that to happen in Connecticut. It happens in communities across the state. So the challenges become what is the public participation? You know, what is the public putting up and whether or not there's an appetite for that public participation. You know, is it money or is it the land, whatever the component is on that side. Yes, I have another one over there too.
My name's Alan Blanchard. been part-time residents of 60 years. But we are very much in the situation that Doug described, is that we're only part-time residents, and we can't afford for that to change for some of the reasons that Doug cited. It astounds me, I think I'm true, because we're starting to look at this, my wife and I are seeming to get very, very seriously, that the estate tax situation in Connecticut is now far more punitive than the estate tax situation in New York. I never thought that day would be seen. The problem I want to mention is I think some of that's not going to change in the short term, and obviously it's beyond the scope of anybody here. But I want to make the point that I think we are probably representative of people whose emotional attachment to this community is far more important, deeper than our, say, chronological attachment. All three of our children have spent every summer of their lives here. Two of the three have bought houses here in the last year. One, in which I gather the kids named one night at the bar at Ward Street Cafe, Feast, Borough East, which is the area around Development Mill and around City Hall. It's really a hot area for those who can't afford, who've been identified out of the borough. But I think this meeting is fabulous, and I have just a plea, I guess. Jeff, we have never voted in anything, although we own 2 pieces of property and I and kids 2 more. It's never been clear to me that we have the authority to vote in anything. And I wonder if there's a way to get the sort of intellectual involvement of people like us closer to the emotional involvement, dealing with the reality that it's not going to change in the short term with the estate tax thing. But a lot of us really love this community and would really love to be more involved if we could figure out a way to do it.
Well, to answer your specific question, you do have the right to vote at the annual meeting on the budget because you pay taxes here. Some states, actually, I think Vermont, you're not allowed to vote if you're not an actual resident. But here you can. So you can. That's one occasion when you can vote.
Yeah, perhaps that's an opportunity to improve. I have you back there.
Hi. I'm Laura Sawyer. We're relatively new as full-time residents, but I've thought about some of these things and some of the things that come up tonight. I'm going to float 3 ideas. I don't know how viable any of them are, but one is a Tom's General Store that is actually digital, being a platform for everything Stonington. So if you are not here year-round and your heart is in Stonington, you can still buy Stonington. You buy it digitally. And I know that for merchants on the ground, there's a sense of, oh, we're already competing with something digital. But that doesn't mean that you can't be part of that as well. Just like Amazon enables merchants to sell through Amazon, I think we could have a general store that is essentially Tom's that everybody feels hurtful about, where you could find artists' work or services or goods and shop digitally. And that would address part of the seasonal population and the ability to support some folks when you're not here. I think the development bill is an enormous opportunity, a huge opportunity for people who, like me, who freelance and work at home. I want a place to go and work, so I think you could have a Creative Commons or a co-working space there that would make it a daytime business thing and not just about night traffic and entertainment. I think that it would attract younger people and create a more vibrant economy of people who are working here, but you may not see them because they're working freelancers from their homes, which is an increasingly strong trend. So I would love to see support of the Development Mill and its development to make it a working space for people and a day, throughout the week as opposed to just Saturday being a place where people go to the farmer's market. And the final idea is, speaking of expanding, I think if there was some affordable housing somewhere around here, there's this trend for, micro apartments and many things. If younger people could afford to come here and have this experience inexpensively in some vehicle that was tasteful and inviting for younger generations to come with their kids, and it's a very expensive community to live in and buy into, and if there was some way to create some kind of small housing thing or condo kind of thing that was affordable, it would revitalize the youth of the community and, prepare you for generations to come. Those are my 3 ideas.
Since the Velvet Mill has come up a couple of times, I should mention that on Monday, I think it's the 27th.
I think it's the 27th.
Yes. There's the Town Economic Development Commission is sponsoring a sort of open forum at the Velvet Mill for a dialogue between town officials, and I'll be there, but the neighbors and others who are interested in the Velvet Mill for whatever reason. So if you are interested, I encourage you to come to that.
Yeah, the Economic Development Commission felt that there was a need for the neighborhood and the businesses that are there to meet each other and maybe start identifying some of the issues so that we may not be able to solve all the problems that people are concerned about, but there may be some solutions for at least some of the management issues that are coming up. So thank you for reminding that that's happening. I'm going to come to you second. I got one first.
I think it might be useful to separate what I think could be entities in the borough that I say, looking at 5 or 10 years, are not really at risk, or not so much at risk, both to themselves and to us as a community. And that would be, for example, the restaurants. There's 6 restaurants. They're all excellent restaurants. People come from catchment area pretty wide to go to them. And the other is the non-for-profits. Most of the non-for-profits, I think, will survive and do well. But those that are at risk are really why we started this whole concept. And that's the small boutiques and merchants on Water Street and in other places, the empty buildings. You see in other parts nearby of buildings being empty, and of course the big problem, as you say, of more and more residents, former residents of the borough, moving south for 6 months in a day because of economic circumstances. So we need to think about the winter months. 7 months or longer is a really tough situation here in the borough for those of us who live year-round. And we see it pretty much every day when we go into Tommy's shop and get the paper. I mean, every single day during the winter I say, Tommy, how you doing? Towards the end of the month, it's not doing that well. There are 12 or 15 of us that subsidize farmers. Everybody knows. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a Tommy's shop here. The other merchants don't have that luxury of having that sort of gratitude, but Tom is kind of like a center of news. So how do you keep what we've got that's good? The small merchants, the barber shops, and then the empty buildings, how do you lure in more people that are doing what the lady just suggested? Those professionals who work from home, have a computer, they have their businesses online, and maybe what Spike has been suggesting is consolidation, cooperation, and expansion. I don't know what the answers are, but I just know that the borough is sort of heading to that situation where many of the shops in the borough would be closing for 6 months or more, 4 or 5 years from now, unless something is done to keep the people coming in.
I'm Howard Park. I'm the street commissioner here in the borough. What I wanted to do is address the Velvet Mill for a moment. The borough gave the land to the Lindmeyer brothers to build the mill here so that there would be an industry for the residents in the borough. So that is holding its nature simply by doing what it's doing today. And in the wintertime, it's actually quite a vital small community where the farmer's market is inside. It draws a huge crowd of people, either out of towners or in town. But somehow there has to be a tie-in between what's happening on the Borough East and what's happening here in downtown. So there has to be a correlation, there has to be a connection, there has to be something that allows our residents to be able to go both ways. Not the residents that have to go south for the winter, either economically or because they simply like to be warm, whatever it is that they need. But the borough has to keep that vitality going, and in fact, the Velvet Mill does help a lot in doing that. And the second thing I want to say just quickly is that we really owe Jeff Callahan a great deal of gratitude for the work that he does here at the borough. And Sue and Roger also. Jeff.
Good evening. My name is Nick Keppel, and I want to make one thing clear. I'm here, I wear many hats. So one thing I'm not here as is attorney for the borough. I happen to be attorney for the borough, but I'm speaking as a citizen, having cleared my remarks with Jeff. I also am president of the library board. More importantly, the borough and its environs are super special to me because I've lived in 3 homes in the borough. I've lived in one home that split the property between the borough and the town. I now live in a home for the last 20 years just outside the borough over by the soccer fields on North Main Street. So I've been in the borough, but, you know, betwixt and between and outside the borough. And I've seen my dad and his 4 sons moved a lot of furniture from New York up to the borough as Tony Bailey's book sparked interest in the borough. So I've seen a lot of transformation, and it's fascinating but also challenging, obviously. A couple of quick thoughts. First off, unrelated to these specific issues, I can't emphasize to you enough how important it is for people who care about this to actually be involved in addressing this. You know, as my background was in political science, and I continue to be amazed at how little people understand how much power they can and influence they can have if they merely participate. So I would just, you know, strongly encourage people to be involved in addressing these. I also think that on the specific economic vitality piece, if we want to keep, as someone who has seen the transformation of the business aspects of the borough from a really diverse village, as has been described, to a different type of economic activity in some respects. But if we want to keep what is here, we have to vote with our feet and patronize these businesses. Even if you think you could get a better deal someplace else, if you want to keep these shops and these restaurants, and then you have to act on it. Lastly, on the governmental side, I just want to share that I think there may be more options than we realized initially with regard to how we might structure things. When the town of Stafford, when the borough of Stafford merged with the town of Stafford, which happened in the early 90s, and when the city of Willimantic merged with the town of Wyndham, which I'm familiar with because I represent a fire district which is in the Wyndham, what used to be called the Wyndhams. Basically, the city of Willimantic realized it couldn't sustain itself, so it basically consolidated with the town, much to the chagrin of some people in the rural areas of Wyndham. But they created in both places they created a service district. So just wanted to share that if, and I'm not advocating that this happened, but if, on Jeff's, I think, second, I don't know whether it was second or third, but if one of the things that people want to think about is changing the relationship that the borough has with the town, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You could quote unquote consolidate with the town, but designate a borough service district, which would retain those certain powers that you wish to retain. And that, what that is, whether it's street maintenance or other things, you know, is part of the discussions and emerges from people's interests. So I just wanted to share that it's not an all or nothing thing. I also share very, very much, undeniably as a personal notion, I think expanding the boundary, the territorial boundary, out to like Route 1 would have some appeal. I happen to be somebody whose property would be affected. But seriously, I think you'd like double or more the population. You'd have a broader pool of people to participate. you'd obviously have a broader tax base. I think, no question, if it took 7 tries to get harbor management, would it be universally beloved notion? It absolutely wouldn't. So there'd be some resistance. But there is the argument that even though you might be subject to a tax in the area between the borough and Route 1 that you're not subject to, you'd also have the panache of being part of the borough. So I think no, seriously, so there is an upside, there'd be an upside to it. So if the state set the territorial boundary, in my view, not having researched it can be changed. And I'm for sure not, I'm also, the other hat I wear is judge appropriate, but I'm not going there with this crowd.
I have a plea that I would like to enlist the help of everyone in this room to deal with what I call CNS. And CNS stands for Cranky Neighbor Syndrome. We are seeing CNS pop up here and about around the town, around the borough, and it doesn't take very long for CNS to start to diminish our willingness to volunteer, to diminish our willingness to participate. It is expensive. It frequently involves litigation. The litigation is frequently against nonprofits, and it causes a breakdown in the sense of community that we desperately need in the borough, particularly given what we've heard tonight. So please, all of you, help me to deal with and wipe out CNS.